Welcome to People of Yes. We are the 21st of August, 2014, interviewing Doctor George Patterson on the danger of false doctrine creeping into house churches and small groups. Dr. Patterson, often when we introduce the practices and the principles of church multiplication amongst clergymen or those who have received a Bible school or seminary education, the first objection that we hear in almost every case is this: if I allowed my laymen to do the work of the ministry, surely false doctrine would creep in. What is the solution to this fear of false doctrine creeping in?
Well, Dr. Kerr, I'm glad you asked that because I've run into that objection many times. It's just assumed that churches start multiplying rapidly, and especially among the less educated, the false doctrine is going to come in. But historically speaking, when we look at the facts, the opposite is the truth. The false doctrines that have really decimated our churches and have weakened a massive number of churches have all come from the highly educated seminary graduates and from seminary professors. A few false teaching do come from younger, immature, uneducated pastors. It's true, of course, but those errors are the innocent kind. They're not purposeful. They don't come out of unbelief. They simply need training, and those people are teachable. You can correct those errors. Up to a seminary professor who's denying the resurrection of Jesus, it's pretty hard to correct those guys. First of all, we need to realize that there's more orthodoxy and doctrine among these new little house churches that are springing up than there are in our conventional churches by far.
Well, in the case where a false teaching was introduced, say, into a small house church in a movement of church multiplication, in what practical ways can that error be corrected?
Well, false doctrine always gets introduced. You know, the wolves are out there snooping around, finding new believers that they can get into their sect and all of that, and false doctrine abounds. They get it from their religious past, often from some other religion, and so it's always there. As it is in any American church, there's a lot of false doctrine. But one good thing about the little house churches is that if they're doing church the New Testament way, then there's a lot of interaction. And people mention their doctrines and their beliefs, and they get these false doctrines out in the open. And that's where you want them. You don't want them to bottle them up and fester beneath the surface. You want them out in the open. And that does not happen when you have just one teacher giving monologue all the time and the rest listening passively. So these little house churches that allow interaction, the one another dynamic, they're very good at detecting and correcting these false doctrines, because normally the majority of believers in a group are filled with the Spirit and love God's Word, they love Jesus, and they very quickly sense something that does not glorify Christ.
In the case where an uneducated, relatively recent believer who is the head of a household, who is leading his little house church, if he suspects there's a false doctrine, what can he do to help correct that?
Well, in a good movement, a solid movement, there's always some kind of mentoring. Sometimes it's formal, and sometimes it just happens by accident. The best way to deal with these issues of when false doctrine does come is you have mentors following the 2 Timothy 2:2 pattern, coaching. You train me, I train others who train others who train others. And so when the false doctrine comes, a good mentor is always asking what's going on to the church. And they'll know that false doctrine is coming in, and they will help their pastoral trainee to deal with it.
In a church planting movement where each generation of new churches is being mentored by a previous generation, then if I hear a false doctrine or something suspicious in my house church, I can take that to my mentor, explain what's happening, and then she or he can do what?
you deal with it. You don't just go run out to the church and start bombasting them with scolding. No, you introduce Bible study or even curriculum that deals with it. And so you have a repertoire of good, solid doctrinal studies, and you use the menu approach. The trainee mentions a situation or a doctrine that needs correction, and you use your menu to pick out teaching or training on that particular doctrine, and you send that out. It may simply be a Bible passage. It may be a little brief pocket study, such as provided by Paul, Timothy, or Train and Multiply. It may be a chapter in a big, fat theology book. It doesn't matter, as long as you get the shepherding to functioning in a way that you're continually teaching solid biblical Christ-centered doctrine.
Well, Dr. Patterson, thank you very much for your reply. You've given me the help that I need. So we're going to have you on again soon, if that's all right.
I hope so.
All right. God bless you today.
You too.